Okay, all right. Shabbat Shalom. We are back. We are today going to be continuing on with our look through the triennial Torah portion. We're looking at today. We're going to go through two chapters, I think, today Genesis 16 and 17. Genesis, Bereshit 16 and 17. We're going to be looking at. So, I think we will start off by reading. Let's just read Genesis 16 first, and then we'll go over. We'll go over. Yes, go ahead.
And Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no child, and she had a Mitzrayim female servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, "See, Yahweh has kept me from bearing children. Please go, into my female servant. It might be that I am built up by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mitzrayim, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. And he had went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarah said unto Abram, My wrong be upon you. I gave my female servant into your bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahweh judge between you and me. And Abram said to Sarah, See, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes. And Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. And the messenger of Yahweh found her by the spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's female servant, where have you come from, and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of Sarai, my mistress. And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, Return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hand. The messenger of Yahweh said to her, I am going to increase your seed greatly, too numerous to be counted. And the messenger of Yahweh said to her, See, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction. And he is to be a wild man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and dwell over against all his brothers. And she called the name of Yahweh, and she called the name of Yahweh who spoke to her, You are the El who sees. For she said, Even here have I seen after him who sees me. That is why the well was called Beri Lo Raharo. See, it is between Kadesh and Beri. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old, and Hagar was born Ishmael, had born Ishmael to Abram.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Very good. So let us look at some things over here. We look back, let's go back looking at verse 3. Go back up to verse 3. And Sarai, Avram's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mitzrayim, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Avram to be his wife. And Avram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan or Canaan. So we know that Avram was given these words from the Most High that he was going to have a seed. He was going to multiply. The seed was actually going to come from him. He got swayed away from just putting this just being somebody in his house, but now we know that it was going to be actually someone that came out from his bosom. But we don't know that is coming actually through his wife, because I don't think it talked about that.
Right.
I don't think it talked about that yet. So I can't remember if did somebody bring this up as far as something being something that was some type of punishment or something against Avram because of the fact that he listened to Sarah.
Yeah. I had brought that up last time.
I couldn't remember. I knew somebody there. I didn't know who it was. Because up to this point, it's not clear. It hasn't been made clear. It wasn't explicit as to how this was going to be. And now this was a thing that culturally what they did.
Right.
If you was barren, it wasn't nothing for you to go and have a child through a handmaiden.
Right.
It just was what they did. It was part of the culture. Or if you was barren, you would go and get another wife, so that you could have some children. One of the main things that you looked for in life was kind of perpetuating your seed. The first thing the Most High said was to be fruitful and multiply. So that was a big part of our life and culture, and to be barren was like a terrible thing. Well, if it at very least it felt like a curse.
What we was talking about before about Abraham listening to Sarah going to sleep and having It wasn't a point that it was not against the law to go and be with one of the servants. The point I was making there was a test of faith and time.
It's all spiritual.
Right, because it didn't listen actually to what the angel said. She thought that she couldn't have no children, so there was doubt. And she told Abram, why don't you go sleep with Hagar and have a child, and we can raise him. Things, and he listened to it. That's what I was talking about. Not that it was out of order for him to do that, but it was out of order for them to jump the gun.
No, I think somebody had brought up about the 400 years.
Yeah.
Was it some kind of punishment? And then we started talking about what could the offense have been. And then somehow I thought it might have been, I can't remember exactly, it might have been connected to.
I think it was somehow related, even though he was, so his faith was strong, but he did have little small transgressions. It's like, it's the same thing with Moses. Moses was so this, so that, but he didn't get to go in the land.
Yeah.
He hit the rock when he was supposed to just stick to it. So But he was this high standard person that
Yeah.
you do gotta think the same thing with David. David's the apple of his eye, but David lost his son. Um, the man's wife and like
Yeah.
so in some form.
Well, he did. Well, David did do some serious things.
Some shiesty stuff.
But I think the only thing that. Oh, what did you say? Oh, yeah.
I love David though.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely had lots of drama in his situation. But I was just thinking about the fact that um, up to this point, I don't think that it was given to Avram specifically as to. It's like as he's doing things, he's finding out that he shouldn't have done it after the fact.
Right.
Like initially, he says, "Well, it's going to be my servant that's the head of my house. He's like a son, so he might as well be the one who carries it out." And then the Most High says, "No, it's going to be someone that actually comes through you." And then now it seems that now this thing has followed all the way out to conception, and well, we will find out later that it's going to be, it's going to actually come through Sarah. But I'm saying up to this point, it wasn't like it's going to be. It wasn't like it was said to him it's going to come through Sarah.
Right.
And then now he goes outside of that and gets and listens and goes and is with Hagar.
I remember that last part. He knew that he was going to have a son because God had told him.
Yeah, but I'm saying how though. He didn't have.
Oh yeah, they did tell him that.
Did we read it all right? Where was it?
He knew he was going to have to do his wife, and I think.
Hold on, what verse you talking about?
I think the reason why she was down what God was talking about.
Hold on, which
Always what he's talking about.
No, he read it in what verse was it that he's going to be set?
did we read that yet? Because right now we at 16.
Or is it actually?
I mean, I think that is 15. 4.
What did I say?
Telling,
15:4.
I thought it was in verse 11.
15:4. And behold, the word of Yahweh came unto him, saying, "This shall not be thine heir," talking about Eleazar, "but he shall come forth out of thine own bosom. Shall thine heir."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it was his bird now.
That he was going to.
Like, I'm married. And right.
But
I think the reason why she probably she was past conceiving age. But you can see
Yeah.
he was 86. So maybe she was doubting what she was up ahead.
well, that's absolutely why. That is why she was down, and she was old.
I was like able to share like your oldest child, like child and heir kind of thing. Like, you know, really like the relationship that they have, he's not, I don't know how to word it.
But he was home. I'm just saying, I wonder how he
I don't
felt.
trust him, believe him, no. Like, not like other, more children, other children ones that had a relationship with him. Like, it was just, it wasn't a previous relationship with him to say, or to lean on, or to reference, you know how to say it, like, the first, the father, the founder.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. They don't have like a reference point. There's no measuring thing to look towards.
He did X, Y, and Z for himself, so I know it was for me.
Yeah.
They were like the whole child, but
So they did have I would say they did have a type of understanding, but at the same time, the thing that he's actually doing through Avram is really kind of it's more, I would say, than what came before. Um, they don't, that we know of, they don't have a written, nothing that's like codified, a written law. It's all based on oral traditions. Um, so in that respect, I guess you could think about it like that and say that um, we can look and say that there's a we can definitely say and look at this, say that there's doubt there. Um, but I don't want to necessarily go to the next step and say that there's wrong necessarily, because again, it was never specifically said that it was going to be through his actual wife. And what they did again is what people of the time do. And so that son is almost like a surrogate thing. And since the handmaiden is literally the property of Sarah, whatever comes out of her really is it belongs to her.
Is that like a lesson behind that? Like, 'cause I noticed when I read this, when I read it, even down to when we get to when Jacob had all his 12,
Yeah,
he wanted. Is it Israel?
yeah,
He I'm not trying to study, but I think like it's the lesson behind the ones that's the love children. Because look at Ishmael get. I mean, he probably got something, but like he was snuck away. Like when Sarah said, "Send her son away," and I
yeah,
probably was wrong for Abraham, but at the time that was his only child.
yeah. Well, he too. It wasn't like he got sent away with nothing. He did get sent away. I guess he did kind of get sent away with nothing, but he did get sent away with a blessing.
He got some blessing, but not like a blessing.
They got sent away with like some bread. So he kind of did get sent away with nothing, but he did get a blessing that he would be great.
But just think of even how Jacob was with his 12 sons. Like he favored Joseph and Benjamin.
Yeah,
They were like his, like the other 10 didn't even really mean anything, but these ones were
right.
Rachel.
Yeah. So in that, and it's interesting how in the patriarchs through their dysfunction, we're actually able to learn lessons through their dysfunction.
I think Rachel
When we look at even with Rachel being Rachel, who I guess was barren too for a time, where she went through a thing, and even when she finally was able to have um, Joseph, Joseph, she wasn't satisfied, even to the point where she named him um, Joseph, which means that he will add, like future. Um, so she still wanted more. Um, so when you look at again, but it speaks to the culture in where a woman must probably feel worthless if she can't function in her womanly task, which is bringing forth uh, children. So it's like it's it's funny because Hizky, we was married a year. I think it was a whole year we went before Hizky was conceived, and you would have thought that Tirsa was like Sarah or something. Like she just was like, it was the most terriblest thing that could ever happen. Like just that short amount of time going by.
But the year
Before she got pregnant with Hizky, that time between the time we got married and the time she got pregnant for the first time. after a few months, it was hell. It was a living hell. You would have thought, and she'll tell you this. I'm not talking about something that she never talked about before. She probably would have likened herself unto the foremothers in their barrenness, just in that short time span. So imagine that, like, to this degree, for Sarah, who lived a whole lifetime and didn't have it. Or you brought up Rachel, for her to sit up there and look at her sister who's having all the babies and she ain't having none. And her handmaids. Yeah, but half of the 12 tribes came from Leah. So he was visiting Leah's tent often, right? Because unless it was having them all them babies. Well, you saying that, but she had the most babies. She had the most babies though.
Obviously, it did. Huh?
Yeah.
I used to do it too. Women should be more careless than not have kids, but even men, your seed this is going to be your future generation.
Yeah.
You should not be just giving this seed to just every
Anybody.
woman.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because it's such, you look at Jacob, it's like them other 10 didn't even mean nothing to him. I mean, he did bless them, but he was so like Joseph was like the first. He's like I'm not mentioning the daughters that was born.
I mean, it's a little different whenever. I mean, it was a family situation. That's different than the towns we live in where you got men literally just putting their seed all over the place. Where at least that was a family situation. Yeah. So it's a little bit different.
I'm looking at it. Rachel was like not being promiscuous or anything, but she was being some decisive and deceptive. And then being out of jealousy, seeing Leah having these babies, and she wanted one too, and then she took the idols from her father. And
well, but
it's a lot of stuff.
I'm saying all those things are relevant because when we look at kind of the plight of the woman, like this is a hard thing, like, and so when you look at what Sarai did here in terms of offering her just out of just kind of the desperation of wanting to have this prophecy be fulfilled, she goes ahead and says, here, take the handmaiden. But then when we keep on going, then now after she becomes pregnant, now she's mad because now kind of reality's setting in and jealousy is setting in, and we look and to me, when people bring up polygyny, to me, these are the things that I think about, because just because a thing is legal don't mean that it's the best way.
Well, the Bible shows a lot of dysfunction with it. Regardless of the Most High allowed it to go down.
You saying a lot, but I don't know where. I don't know where it don't show dysfunction. You saying a lot. I'm saying I don't see nothing but that.
He's the first son. He had to go. Right? Because of strife between Sarah and Abraham.
Yeah.
I wonder how you felt though. At the time you didn't have, you guys sitting there, you think it was probably going to be your.
Oh, you talking about how Avram felt?
Yeah, I wonder how you felt.
Yeah. Well, you can see. You can. Let's see. you can see, we'll see some in the next chapter. You're able to see, kind of get a glimpse as to Avram, how he feels about the situation in the next chapter. But if you look at, let me pull up, it's just one verse. 1 Corinthians 6 and 12. 1 Corinthians 6 and 12. Read 6 and 12.
Read 6.
1 Corinthians 6, verse 12.
I have to switch over to every version.
Yeah.
12. Y'all there?
Yeah.
All right. All is permitted me, but not all do profit. All is permitted me, but I shall not be under authority of any.
King James says all is lawful,
Law. Yeah.
but not all is expedient.
Speed.
Just because it's something that you have the ability to do doesn't mean that that's always the best thing to do. You know, when you think about to me, when I look at this, when I look at the scriptures and people get to talking to me about these relationships, you can't take away that human element. We're humans, we're human beings. We're striving to be a certain way from a spiritual perspective, but humans feelings. So the selfless thing for Sarah to do was say, my man needs this baby. I can't give him one. I'll give him my handmaid so that he can have this thing. It's selfless, right? But she didn't count the cost. She wasn't able to handle this thing in her flesh at the end of the day. And I don't know where the examples of the mothers who was able to accept that reality of that thing that was 100% legal, but it caused problems. It caused problems, for human beings. We become jealous. How do exactly? How do you can't get around it? You can't get around it. And so, even though these things are things that are 100% legal, it's not expedient for you to do these things. Great care and preparation and things need to be taken into account if you was going to try to endeavor into such things. It cannot be just a thing. Well, we going back to the way they used to do it, like and that's the whole basis of it, without going through everything that's physically possible for you to do in order for this thing to work out right. Because we see if they would have counted the costs, they never would have even went through all of this. If she really would have thought about this thing all the way through, she would have known that she wouldn't have been able to, you know yourself. You know what you able to take and what you ain't able to take. And if you one of them people who know that you can't take it, you know what I mean? You ain't got no business going into nothing like that. And we find out, you see her heart for real once the rubber meets the road.
because Hagar, she got, maybe she was looking at her a certain way.
Maybe she was. Maybe she was.
Because her to feel like that.
I know, but and I'm saying as a human, why wouldn't you do that? Just in your carnality, why wouldn't you? She was probably this little young little Egyptian thing, yeah, you know what I mean, and she looking at this old lady over here who can't, even though well, even though Sarah was very beautiful, but she did have something over her where she was fertile and Sarai wasn't.
Right.
So even if that was the only thing, not the beauty part, because we know Sarai was, she had the beauty part, she had that, but what she didn't have was fertile ground. And so when you think about how the carnal mind is, it don't talk about that, but there probably was that. I'm saying it could have been either way. I'm saying knowing the carnal mind, it could have been that, but you're right, it didn't have to be that. It could have just been all inside of her.
Lack of children and just seeing her develop this baby and nurture this baby.
I mean, which mother is not going to have a child and have a sense of pride in their baby?
I don't know.
Like, he's not going. She's probably glowing.
She ran away and showed that she felt some sort of humility or felt some sort of.
Because Sarah was going in on it.
But then she felt, and she took that position of being like, well, I had this baby over you. I had some sort of leverage over you. She would have stayed. She would have ran. She would have stayed.
I think she ran because Sarah was, feeling some kind of way, and she was like, making it hard for her.
But when you're not, what she's saying is, if I know I'm not in no type of wrong, I don't care what you're saying, right? So it could have been both. Like it might have been some type of self-guilt, just knowing. And it might have been, she might have been most. Like it could have been Sarah already got insecurity. So whatever was going on, it's going to build off that. We're emotional creatures.
So let's say you got a job, right? And they double your workload for the same money. You stay or you quit?
Now I am, but there's times that depending on my situation, I've had, and I was complaining and hate the job, and probably ended up to get fired because my attitude shows. This depends on the situation.
So most people quit. So just imagine Hagar, you know what I'm saying, in a situation where before everything was nice and lovely, you had a baby, and then the hand comes out. She's like, oh, I'm out.
But I think that the difference is though it was different, I would say, than kind of like a boss employee thing. She was a little more. She was a handmaid, like she was property, like so it was that, but it was what you were saying, but it's more though, because she's the property.
So this is.
Hold on. Yeah.
So
She's property.
actually a slave.
She wasn't a slave.
No, she was property. Here. We don't gotta think about it. We could just look at the thing, right?
But I thought he
So that's what I'm saying, because of that relationship, there was this submissive or what's the word for it? Like she knew that Sarah was her owner. So there was this, like she didn't see her as competition that Sarah made her look at her as. So I think that's why she ran away.
But I thought he summoned. I thought she was.
No, she ran away.
No, the second time she was son.
The second.
First time she did.
Yeah. When she came back, so she walked towards that way.
Well, the angel gave her his hope.
Like,
Humble himself.
But
And
why-
so she probably
But
had
why?
some
But
pride.
why would you say humble yourself if you're just so innocent?
So, like I said, when you have a baby, ain't she like,
But what I'm saying is not answering my question. Why wouldn't he say humble yourself? Why would the Most High? I serve the Most High. Why is he even going to allow you to be such a way with your son if you was just this honest, sweet, innocent mother who just had a pride in your baby?
Well, I'm saying that her leaving order in the first place because she was property. So she need to go back and be who she was, which was this slave girl. That's what it says right over here, right? Maid servant as belonging to a mistress. Belonging. She was literal property. So all she had to do was go back, and then she would be humbling herself because she was wrong for leaving because she was property in the first place. Well, I'm saying that was part of it. She probably needed to. She potentially had to fix her face when she got back too. We don't know that, but it's.
Well, why was he allowing her to get sent out the second time?
Who you talking about?
I mean, like, Abraham didn't just send her away after Sarah told him to. He was a little. He went
You
to-
talking about the second time?
Yeah. Away here.
Yeah, that's the and that's.
Make no mistake about it. Abraham, loved Sarah. You know what I mean? In the situation we brought about by Sarah giving him, he didn't say, "Hey, Hagar." You know what I'm saying? She gave him them. She created the whole situation and it blew up in her
But that's
face.
what I'm saying, like the whole doubt thing, the whole like you just taking matters into your own hand. I could apply that to this myself. If you're doing things, it's not happening in your timing. You should expect every time, especially now that I'm where I'm at now. Just in the, when I do things my way, it always just smacks me 20 times.
What we can't do is we can't look at it from our eyes. So like Tom was saying, this was a part of the custom of the day for handmaidens to be given and and concubines and all that.
Should get a lesson from it, though.
Yeah.
And not just the lesson of the day.
But I'm just saying though, so these are normal things in that day that went on in that situation.
The Yahweh allowed. He allowed it to go on. I would want to be with somebody that's mistreated me and I'm pregnant. That's probably why she ran away the first time.
That's what I was saying. Like,
That's true. I ain't gonna hang around.
That's what I was saying.
And
She didn't run away
like
because she was guilty. Even though she probably did some things, she probably had some pride and some issues. You know what I mean? But it might have not been like she was like lifting up against Sarah. She might have just been proud that she had a baby. Right. You know what I mean? And Sarah was like, oh, she thinks she all that.
She thinks she all that. Probably was thrown in her face though.
She could have been.
This is my son.
Or she could have been just like I said, like a regular mother, proudful of her child, right? You know what I mean?
She could have just had her baby and like, oh, well, we're just talking about conception over here. So she could have just been like rubbing her little stomach and so happy, and then Avram come over. Oh yeah, look at the baby bump. Oh, he just moved. He's kicking. Oh, over here.
Sarah's over there small. One of these, like looking at her baby and then look up at Sarah.
And give her a little smirk.
She could have been one of Sarah like,
Get out!
So it really could be either way. It could have been either way. There's yeah.
I think built on that emotional, and I think that
a little bit of
I think
It definitely could have been both of those things for sure.
This might have been Tash. What's her name? Agar didn't do that because of something done days ago. It's been still sitting on Sarah's mind. So that sat there for the last 5 days. Now it's like, oh, she walked like that.
Okay, so if we go down, we see that when we look down, I think the next thing when we look over, verse 10, moreover, the angel of Yahweh said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. The angel of Yahweh said to her further, behold, you are with child, and you will bear a son, and his name shall be Ishmael, because Yahweh has given heed to your affliction, which is interesting. He will be a wild donkey
Living against his brother.
of a man, his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him.
Oh,
But another
Speaking-
version says
speaking of that,
brother.
Yeah.
you know, the angel said he had seen her affliction, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Evidence.
shows it right
That's
there that
evidence.
Sarah was, coming down.
Was treating
with
him, hammering, bringing the hammer down on him.
that.
It just says treated. So Sarai treated her harshly. We don't know what that means. Whether it was just being mean or it could have been
Extra low.
good. Yeah. It could have been many things, but like as you say over here, it's been called affliction. Hold on, what's that? What verse was that?
Be blessed that Hagar was an Egyptian.
11.
That was the wrong blood. Which is true.
11. That word over there is Anam, which is the same thing that was going to happen to Israel for 400 years. That was going to be afflicted. Right? So even the thing that was like affliction, it was literal affliction, depression. That is misery, afflicted, affliction, or trouble.
So
So,
she was depressed.
well, she was being depressed or like pushed against. She was being pressed down, affliction.
I has heard your affliction. When I think of depression, I mean, I just look at
Not
the
depression, not mental.
Not mentally depressed.
Like somebody, pressing on it. Like,
No, or it could be, I mean, that's just a bit, or it could be, she was depressed because of her situation. Like, we're not supposed to be like, that's the way, so she could have been being mistreated and gotten into like a dark, depressive state of mind. Like, it could be not depression.
Well,
being
I would
depressed.
say that it seems as if you're going to say that she was mentally depressed, it was because she was depressed on the outside, which caused the mental thing to happen.
Right.
We already know that there was some type of that Sarah was the antagonist. We know that. So if she talked to her bad, if all she did was talk to her bad and made her feel less about herself, that could still be oppression, which is depression. So if it was something that was internal, it seems as if it came from something that was external.
But the bottom line is she mistreated.
Yeah. But I'm saying that when we look at what's going on over here, you see this angel of Yahweh coming and dealing with and comforting this Egyptian woman, though. What's the point of bringing Hagar back? What do that
yeah,
do?
it's interesting that the angel of the Lord went to Hagar.
What do it do? He's not. Then it's you just gonna go back and humble yourself. Not if you go back, you'll be great or nothing like that. You're not gonna. You're never gonna rise up above her. Go back to your station where you belong.
Play your part.
And yeah,
But ultimately, she's going to get cast out again.
yeah. So why? Why is the Most High dealing with her at all?
Well,
Maybe because
you know our beginning anyway and our ending. So maybe it was a purpose that we wanted her to be under their guidance or something.
perhaps that's what I was going to say. I was going to
For Ishmael's sake.
I was going to say that Ishmael plays a part in the future. And so I think that maybe at that time when she left, maybe they wouldn't have survived or something. You know what I mean? It wasn't the right time.
Mhm.
Ultimately, they were going to be put out, but Ishmael plays a key part in the persecution of Israel.
You know what? Because it doesn't say, it talks about the feelings of Abraham. As a father, I love my son. I really don't want to do this. I don't want to I don't want to send him away with his mother. You know, maybe the Most High was saying, go back there, you know, for Ishmael's sake. So that he can be with his father, you know, but she still had to play her part. You know? But at the end of the day, Sarah did still give her the good
Yeah.
and to her. You understand? He listened to her.
Yeah.
And he basically put away his son. You got to go over here with your mama, man. You know, this is that, this whatnot. He didn't even fight for his son. Sort of didn't say. I don't really know, but maybe he did, but it don't say he didn't. I mean, he did, but nevertheless, he too got a blessing, you know. But one of the things that stood out to me is when y'all, it tickled me. When Abraham said, oh, y'all, that you will bless Ishmael. He said, no, no. Just flat out, no.
Yeah.
You know, because he's not the promised seed, not through an Egyptian. No. Might be his seed, but that's not the seed I'm talking about.
Well,
That's not the promise.
You know, it's interesting because Abraham's personality, you know, seems to be a little, you know, like nonchalant, like
Laid back.
Like away,
Yeah,
now
yeah.
sending his son
Son away.
away.
He's like, whatever.
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 You know what I'm saying? So it seems to be like
Different situations, like it seems like, yeah.
the different situations, but it seems to have that like
Yeah.
ability to just be like, all right.
Well, he's obedient. First of all, he's already obedient. But, you know, you can tell he's obedient. He's even obedient to his wife. You know, do that. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, baby. I'll do it. You know,
Or maybe that, you know, we don't have the right mindset when we're willing to just detach ourselves from certain things that we attach ourselves to.
that's true.
And we put those things in front of the Most High,
Yeah.
the way Abraham's like, all right, deuces. Now with the Sarah thing, with them giving them to the Pharaoh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I think.
That was weird.
Yeah.
You know,
But I like what you're saying because apart from giving his wife away, you can see it. Well, I'm saying specifically to the situation with Hagar and Ishmael, you could see where if this is something that he knows is coming from the Almighty, then he's able to just be like, okay, that's what it's going to be.
And I like that point of view you said as far as like being able to detach yourself because if it would have been, it seemed like he would have been what Sarah said. If it would have been conflict through there, like it seemed like he's going to have time for it. Like, and just even when he was told to give Isaac as a sacrifice,
right.
that had to be hard though. Like
Yeah.
I can't imagine how he felt really about that.
I know, and he was,
That's-
yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
He
That
was-
was, but it's like he don't go against. Like when it's like he's really an example of doing what he's told
Mhm.
and comes from.
But it's obviously
Right.
he did have faith because of the sentence that he told Isaac. You know, when Isaac said, Father, the wood and fire we have, and where's the ram? No, he told him,
Yeah.
but he told him, Yah will provide for himself. A burnt offering for himself. You know, not for us, for himself.
So oh, go ahead.
I really like that part too, of Abram's faith. But when you look at that, you notice that Sarah didn't know nothing about it.
Nope.
You know, because if I was there, she took my son. And I'm so
Taking my son. Yeah, that is something. Don't tell. You know how you black women is.
See how he always did that. He got up early in the morning. He did not let his wife know what was going on because I feel she. Well, we want my child.
So when we think about this, when we think about what's going on, what we can see with these examples, it should help us to be able to recognize in ourselves. Now, when you have a thing where you don't have to think about whether it's coming from the Most High or not,
This is real interesting.
there shouldn't be no wavering. It's one thing if you don't know where the thing is coming from, and then we see the things that he does. Well, there's unsurety, and he just says, well, okay, this seems like it might be a good idea, like to get to the place where the Most High said he already. I know for a fact I'm going to be a blessing to all the nations, and my seed will be great, more than the stars and the sands of the sea and all of that. I know that's for a fact, but I don't know how it's going to get there. So maybe I'll do this thing to get there. But when you're able to see and know for without a shadow of a doubt that something's from the Almighty, then there shouldn't be no wavering in that. It's one thing where you have kind of these gray areas, and where up until this point, where the baby was coming from was kind of a gray area. But he knew that he was supposed to have a seed, so he was going to go ahead and do what he needed to do for the seed to come. So it was like he was on the right track, but he definitely did take some extra steps that was outside of the will. But I'm saying, when we looking at this, if we are able to say that I know that the Most High has for me to be doing this, then we don't have no excuse going outside of that. When you have that surety of a thing, then you can't be wavered in that. And we can see as an example of Avram, who's doing that. He knew that his seed was going to be great, so he's making steps to make that seed great, even though he's outside. But he's not necessarily transgressing, because he didn't. It was unclear. So we could say that there was doubt in the how, but not that it was going to be.
Shella Brown said, in the the chat. Shella Brown, she said Abraham may have been trying to correct his mistake in the same way that today people have abortions. He knew the covenant and promises were to him and Sarah. She also said
Abortions?
She said Sarah said, "May my wrong be upon you," and he agreed, and he did agree. Hence, his need to correct the situation.
Abortions, though?
No, she said it the same way they do today.
So she's equating abortions to right and wrong.
I don't know. It seems that way. I'm only reading what she said. Abraham may have been trying to correct his mistake in the same way that today people have abortions. Well, when you have an abortion, that's not correcting a mistake. That's getting rid of it.
I don't see
No.
I don't see Ishmael made a mistake.
No.
I think God was very intentional. And he's like this word said, he knows no end from beginning.
Well, I know a covenant of bondage came through Ishmael.
A purpose and a reason. Like, even if it wasn't the right time or the right, person or whatever. I feel like
Ishmael wasn't the promised seed, but at the same time, he serves a purpose.
Yeah,
Ishmael definitely serves a purpose. He wasn't the promised seed, but you can't. I think that's how we think about things in terms of like a mistake, right? Because great things got to happen in order for that seed to get to that destination, and then I'm gonna make it all the way to the end. I feel like that's always something that the Most High allows. He's the giver of life. The Most High is indeed the giver of life. But we see where he allowed for this life to come to pass, it still didn't make him the chosen. Even though he was when the excellency of the strength of Avram, it was the first one of his seeds to ever make it over to the promised land. He wasn't the firstborn.
That goes with like what you're saying, because even though I'm saying this wasn't, what I be getting on videos, why it's so important to be mindful of who you're being received.
Yes.
But at the
It's
same
the
time,
utmost.
even though that we can see that in the word, we can also see that he's not saying that this, whatever, this offspring seed is a nothing or a nobody.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's saying that in the midst of when I'm reading, I don't get that.
Yeah.
These seeds don't count. Because even if using the 12, the whole 12 mother will father the nation like that was the beginning of how great we came just from number 12. But in the midst of it, Joseph was like the main focus as far as how Jacob was concerned. Joseph was his favorite, and
Right.
he like really like valued him. But in the long run,
Mhm.
the Levites was the priests, like so. Yeah.
We can-
Not everyone's a priest, so everyone serves a
Yeah.
purpose. So I do get it's not like I'm like you supposed to get from an idea the other seeds won't count if we don't do it the right way. But it's good to take all that. Like if I'm a man today and I'm reading the word even on Wednesday,
Mhm.
and I'm like young, like I would be like looking at that like, okay, yeah.
Well,
What I was gonna say is that, look at Ishmael's purpose. Ishmael's purpose is, and he was gonna be a wild man.
Slander your neighbor.
a wild donkey of a man.
Wow, don't give a man.
But that's how we know. There are people who think of, like, like just put it in perspective. Look at the one who grew up in a two-parent home from a love situation. Now look at the one, he might have a loving dad, but the situation was dysfunctional from the start as far as the mom and dad had known. Look at I guess look at difference. I've seen it firsthand. I know somebody who's a father to all his kids.
Mhm.
Yeah. Father to all his kids. And it was going on holidays. He had made a statement. He made a statement when he was shopping for his kids. And he said, now imagine at the time none of us are religious. But he was like, now I see why it's important to marry before you have kids. He said, there's no way you could be in all the households.
Nope.
And he was like, and how did you explain to this to one of your kids? Well, the reason why I didn't look over here is like your mom was just somebody I was just, like how did you say that to your kids?
Yeah.
And these are kids that he loved, like he,
Yeah.
they equally the
Yeah.
same. But the attachment to the one son, which is from a long time girlfriend, and that he was good for some, it was a whole different connection. So regardless, like it's
Sarah.
well not.
When
So you were supposed to say that it was like that they weren't married. That's not
Right,
saying.
yeah, I'm not saying
But
that.
yeah, but
That's
you know,
the one you wanted.
Yeah, but even the same thing, even when I look at, with me and Danger's dad, there was a baby before Danger. And he had no desire to be, now I be concerned now because it's like, I wanna know, because that would be Danger's only brother from her dad. He's a boy, yeah. He had no desire. And it's like, or his family, like, there was no desire to even, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now every little reason, now down the road, if he was still be living in the city, I'm pretty sure, just maturing as a man, he would have been back there. But this it'd be a disconnection. Just look at how them kids be wild. Them kids be wild. The ones that don't be having that, them are the ones that be more just like out of place.
Yeah.
They probably go through a lot of mental stuff too. Just learn. Every kid probably want to know why, especially if they see their brother who has it. And they don't have a recollection of when their dad and their mom was together.
and when you think about all this that you're talking about, and you look at what the Torah brings to the situation, the Torah brings functionality back into dysfunction. When people are able to be connected back to the Father, and when people are able to allow the character of the Most High to be manifest in their lives, it brings functionality to the situation where we have when we look out and we see how our people are outside of Torah, and we see how they are. Babies all over the place, no connection to the babies. Like it brings you back to nature. It brings you back to just the natural thing. If I'm a husbandman, if I'm a guy who cultivates my garden, I'm going to take my seed and I'm going to take great care with this seed, and not only with the seed, with the garden. So I'm going to cultivate this land, and I'm going to put my seed in this cultivated land. I'm going to break up all the chunks. I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to pull the wheat. I'm going to take care of it. Right? Which is different than how Yeshua talks about the sower, but he's giving you an example of how you're supposed to do with the word, right? But as a husbandman, you care about where you put that seed at. And so, but Torah brings us back to that thought process where we're not just throwing our seed anywhere and not caring for it, right? So when
we're not caring for your kids, but we're throwing it anywhere.
you're not caring for the seed,
but that part is all weedy over there.
right? But that's not really caring for it though.
So are you saying that that's the reason why Israel went back so that Israel could be taught under his father?
Well, I think that's what Chris was saying, and I think that I agree with that in terms of he may have been he was older when he left, so he was able to have those formative years where he was able to grow and be taught somewhat in the ways. As to where he went off, yes, he went off, and he wasn't with his father anymore, but he still had those formative years, and we know that he was like unto the promised seed. He was going to grow and multiply and be great in and of itself. But I'm saying that in terms of looking at this and learning from this, we're able to see where, when we think about, how this fits into the life that we kind of experience now, where we see our people, that have been disconnected from the Father and fell victim to this other culture that we're a part of that's actually fights against us, as to where the first thing that they seek to do is to break up the family structure, right? If you want to weaken the people, the first way you do that is by breaking up the family structure, destroying the foundation of that, which is the man.
You got women, they created these women's societies of women empowerment to put, why I say empowerment, it could be a power woman, like to put all this dysfunction in the roles. Now you got women who, and I'm still suppressing some of that, like just having a mindset. My mom's like, she showed me like being independent, having your own, like, I gotta have my mind, but like, I gotta have my own.
Yeah.
That's how we've been. That's how you can tell. Like, I gotta have my own.
Yeah, which is dysfunctional. I just was having a conversation. You said fire woman. I literally was just having a conversation with this guy because I saw this thing on Facebook and they had all these women and they had all their firemen's clothes on and they were sitting in fire instead of a fire truck. And it was this thing about like this equality thing, like, and the guy.
Come and carry you out.
That's the same thing I said. That's the same thing I said. So I'm like, everything ain't. I don't know why you guys said. I don't know why you guys said it could go take two of them. I don't know why you guys said.
When they put the LGBT thing in place, they've been putting it in place, and they started when they funded the women's rights.
How about gays are about to get reparations?
That's crazy.
And he said that they couldn't just spring it out there. So what they did was they carefully thought out. So now they use women. Oh, you gotta have a right. You should have a right to vote. You should have an equal thing with the man. So you got all these women rights that was in the 1930s or whatnot. And we jumped on the bandwagon. You know,
Yeah.
'cause at this point, we're going through like the 80s and we're growing up in the
I
90s.
understand though, because at that time, it was hard for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of the men were out of the homes and.
Well, it was a war.
But why
Oh.
I think.
Yeah, it was deliberate.
We were not under the same oppression that he spoke about. Caucasian women were under. It was not the same
Yeah,
thing.
it wasn't.
It wasn't.
It-
Like, they
it-
wanted freedom from their
Yeah, it was.
husband.
It wasn't.
Oh yeah, that's what happened. So
We wanted
well,
freedom
black
from
people
their
black people are not white.
Right. But here's the thing,
Yeah.
you were saying that for years, but here's the thing, they carefully thought that. They knew that we didn't, like you said, we didn't go to any of that. We had our structure, we had our, so they used that. And so of course, like you said, we jump on a bandwagon, just like we jump on your bandwagon, it's for like everything we start on to shift this way. So now the roles are off, but then when they created public assistance, now you already been told our women that they should have their own money, right?
It's that was created for farming.
But,
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far. I don't want to go too far off track, but I think the point here is that when we get back to the Father, when we get a real relationship with the Almighty, when we get back to our spiritual, what should be our spiritual baseline, it brings us back to where we should be at. Where we're obviously now in a place, I'm saying as a whole, we, need to come back to, which is functionality. And so when we look over here and we see, what's going on with these things are going on over here with Avram and Sarah, but it's still inside of a culturally functional situation. Like this is really what the society of the day and the culture. This is what they did, right? And so when we see when the angel of Yahweh comes and talks to Hagar, saying, go back. What you're going to be facing there is irrelevant, right? Go back to where you belong, basically, right? And just a thing that I was looking at that just to see was, in spite of the fact of who she was, being an Egyptian, which I guess at the time Egyptian hadn't become the arch nemesis of Israel yet. But still, you still talking about people who really is on the outside. The only reason why she's even there is because she is the property of Sarai. But yet it's still the Most High went and talked to her and she recognized who she was talking to based on the fact that therefore the well was called over here Bir Lahai Roy, which literally means that word literally means the well of the one who sees. So she was able to recognize. It wasn't like she just heard like a voice in her mind. It wasn't just like she got some type of unctioning. Well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I need to go back. She knew the Most High was dealing with her, and she knew that she needed to go back and return based on the words that she had received from this angel of the Most High. Okay, so that being so, over to anybody have any more thoughts, questions, or comments on 16? If not, we're gonna go look at 17 and deal with some more of these things over here. Okay, so let us go over to the next chapter. Let me pull this up over here. Let me get my cursor over here. Pull up Genesis 17. Verse 1. This I want to just kind of just go through kind of verse by verse. Genesis 7. Hold on. Let's see. Let's actually just read down to 14. Genesis 17, 1 to 14.
Let me know when you're there. All right. And it came to be when Abram was 99 years old, that Yah appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be perfect. And I gave my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you. And Abram fell on his face, and Yah spoke with him, saying, As for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. And no longer is your name called, but your name shall be Abraham, or Abraham, because I shall make you the father of many nations. And I shall make you exceedingly fruitful, and make nations of you, and sovereigns shall come from you. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generation. For an everlasting covenant, to be Elohim to you and your seed after you. And I shall give to you and your seed after you the land, your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, and everlasting possessions. And I shall be their Elohim. And Elohim said to Abraham, As for you, guard my covenant and your seed after you throughout the generations. This is my covenant which you guard between me and you and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. And a son of 8 days is circumcised by you. Every male child in your generations who is born in your house or brought with silver from any foreigner who is not your seed, he is born in your house, and he is brought with silver has to be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And an uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, his life shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant.
Okay.
So before you make that covenant, the male was going to be circumcised before that.
I was still
I'm not sure that it was. I don't know if the origination of circumcision came through this or not. It definitely wasn't a common thing that everybody did. I could say that.
But that prevents like people who are not circumcised. They're like telling somebody protection.
Well, I guess you gotta be more.
You gotta be a man to know that stuff. Sorry, no, I'm messing with you.
You just gotta be a little more hygienic.
Yeah.
With your situation.
But you know what though? I do think it started there because y'all made it plain that the circumcision, and he described it cutting off the foreskin, and he said this is a sign.
It definitely was. I just never looked at the history of it to know if other people did it.
Well, it's not. Really.
It seems as if it was. It seems the way that it is when you look at it that this is a custom that came about as a result of this,
Well, I mean,
because
that's
the
like
use
how
of
it
it.
is now. It's like a thing. That's what made me bring that.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
far
yeah.
as,
Well,
okay,
now here,
like,
yeah, yeah.
That's what you bring up, don't kids to get infection, because now that's normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you don't know to be circumcised.
Yeah, it's normal
Even
now.
even
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's normal. But I'm just
But
saying,
then it kind of is doing a thing. So now you got the ultra kind of the crunchy kind of like Whole Foods people who now they revert back. Well, that's like some mutilation. Where they don't, you don't want to sit up there and cut this thing off or whatever like that. So it went from a place where it was just a thing that they just automatically do to where now, because people want to just be whatever, now it's at a point where they kind of people some people kind of shy away from the thing.
I look.
But
Most, but I didn't know what it meant to be circumcised, but my grandmother, when I was going to have my son, she was saying, don't do it to get them circumcised. And what I discovered being out in the world, mostly black guys back in the day, they were circumcised because that was passed down generation to generation, and most blacks weren't. But it was passed down in blacks, generation down, that your sons have to be circumcised. We didn't know what it meant.
yeah,
But we were told to do our sons, and none of the males that I knew did not know what that meant to do, that why their mothers did that.
Yeah.
That was something that was passed down, generation down from blacks. And that's how it was. And now that I see this, it just lets me know that how important it was to do it back then.
yeah,
Yeah, because he said if you didn't do it, you'd be cut off from your own people. It had to start there because
I just can't say for
I mean,
sure.
I'm gonna take a leap of faith. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it. For me, I'm gonna take a leap of faith and say it did start there because who told them to do it in the first place? It ain't like they just jumped up and said, "Hey, what's this?" I'm gonna just get rid of this because I don't think it belonged there. And from in my past, in my dealings, in my dark past, from dealing with a lot of women in the street, I was told that they ran into a lot of uncircumcised men. And now I was here discussing, damn, nasty, blah, blah, blah. So I understand that.
But you're
So
talking about
you
people
could
like
be
what in the 80s?
lacking hygiene, stuff on
You're
that.
talking about in the 80s?
Yeah. No, you trying to tell my age, man? Hey, dang. It's like, no.
I'm saying all the way back. When we go back, I'm saying when you look at this, it seems as if this is the thing that the Most High made up. It seems like it.
Yeah, it does.
All I'm saying is that I don't know that there wasn't other people that were doing it, and then now it seems like the way that it is that even if he's saying that this thing is a sign between the covenant.
This is a sign.
So I'm saying it seems like wasn't nobody doing it outside of Abraham.
This is the
But
covenant.
all I'm saying is that I don't know the history of it to other cultures, what they were.
I believe it did start with the covenant, and I see why he did. The point I was getting at, I see why he changed it to like circumcising the heart, because it's a common thing. It wasn't as common as it is now, but it didn't matter as far as how Israel became.
What was it? What you said? What wasn't? You saying circumcision wasn't a common thing?
It
wasn't,
common,
no.
But what I'm saying is, when the new covenant came, it's like
Circumcision of the heart.
Circumcision of the heart.
Yes, cutting the foreskin of malice and hate and all that.
And that's the point he's saying, like, well, don't they get infections because now it's like a thing. Like how she said, it's the thing. Like you figure, my mom said it wasn't common in the 80s, but it's like people get them. They don't even be religious or nothing.
It's just a thing that they do at the hospital.
But the new covenant has nothing to do with whether you're circumcised or not, literally. This
In
is
the flesh.
Yeah, it's now.
In the flesh, it doesn't matter.
On that expensive
Well, let's before we keep on talking about circumcision, let's go back because I want to talk about circumcision, but I don't want to skip over
Go ahead.
the beginning
Yeah.
part because you're saying a lot of good things. I want to come back to it for sure. But right, if we go back to the first verse where it says, "Now when Avram was 99 years old, Yah appears to Avram and said to him, I am," it says, "God Almighty."
I am.
What's it say in? What's it say in? Oh, Almighty God. It says in King James, which is El Shaddai.
El Shaddai.
El Shaddai. I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be blameless.
Be blameless.
So if we just stop right there and deal with the way that the Most High is talking with Avram, if we think about the way the Most High spoke after the Exodus,
Mm-hmm.
he always is saying, "I am Yahweh who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage."
Mhm.
Like he's always kind of giving you his calling card, his credentials.
You know who I
Things
am,
that's
right?
backing up his kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
But over here, he's doing the same thing, but he don't have the same way in which to do it because again, he's building his situation with Avram.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that he's saying to him is that I am El Shaddai. I am the mighty one. That's El. El is mighty one, and Shaddai is this Almighty,
Mm-hmm.
which means. Let me pull that up over here. It's translated as Almighty.
Excuse me.
That word Shaddai, Almighty. Most powerful, Almighty. It's interesting that Elohim kind of means powerful. Right? So when we think about El Shaddai, it's kind of like doubling up on the attributes in a single kind of a situation. We look at Elohim, well, El, which is the singular of Elohim, really means power. It really means mighty, right? So when you got El Shaddai, you have this one who's mighty, almighty, right? If I was to say it in English, I'm saying mighty, almighty, basically, right? Hold on, what?
Abraham was like walking more on the faith because like how you just said, he was saying to Israel, I'm the one that brought you out of Egypt and then brought you. And then the other one, the one that he'll say, took you out of the Egypt, put you in the land. But with Abraham is just like, I'm almighty. Like,
Yeah.
Abraham was walking on faith.
But that was enough for him.
Yeah, walking on faith, no proof, just walking on whatever, like walking on just faith in this almighty
Yeah.
God. How many times?
Yeah, which says a lot about him.
Yeah.
I mean, when you really think about it, and the greatness of his faith, because of the faith of of Abraham, here we are. Because of the faith that he had, however long ago that was, his chosen people are his chosen as a result of who he was and his great faith.
And that's just proof that we got to and I think when I read like over, it's like there's no excuse to why you can't. Well, I don't say me, I'm not saying.
Okay, you saying it now.
Why I can't be so faithful.
Somebody gonna bring those words back and hand them right to you.
What I love about that, it was Israelites there.
Say that again.
What I love about him, there was no Israelites there. No sound.
Why you saying that?
Because it's done.
Well, I mean, yeah, they wasn't. They was still in his bosom.
Yeah. But, and the fact of that in itself is that, God, Yahweh chose out of all the people that was on the earth,
Mm.
he chose him for his purpose. So that's what I.
But he chose them for a reason, though, unless you
He knew he
Calvinist.
was going to do it, but it's like, he said, he gonna call on him, he was gonna answer.
Yeah.
Everybody don't get
Yeah.
that call.
Right.
And there's people that get, like, I just said that. Yeah, I just said people, some people get a call, and still reject the call. They'll get a call from a, they'll call from you know,
That's another thing, yeah.
And so we can see, right? We can see through his actions are really proving the Most High right in terms of choosing them in the first place, because we can see that all the Most High gotta say is, "I'm the most powerful one that there is," and then Abraham is like, "Okay, I believe you. What to do now?" That's all he gotta say. He don't got to prove nothing to him. He didn't have to perform no miracles, none of that. I'm the most powerful, the one that there is. And he said, "Okay, good. Now what? Where we going? Point me in the right direction." We got to have people falling out and raising people from the dead and all this other stuff that we got to have in order to believe. But Mosai come to this man and say, "I am mighty, almighty. Walk before me and be blameless." So that's all that he needed. But because of that, again, because of that great faith, and all he had to do was just say that, now you got a whole people now, that's called after his name, because you had Avram in the first place that was able to just believe and have faith and follow and teach his children uh, the same thing, right? So again, we see over here, walk before me, and be blameless. So we see a connection between having a relationship with the Father and walking in perfectness. That word blameless, which is translated as perfect in the King James, is tamim. Tamim. So it's translated as perfect, but some better word is complete, or wholeness, or entire, or sound. When we think about walking with the Almighty, I don't know how more whole you can get, right? I could talk about how imperfect you are without him, right? But with him, right, is completeness. And that's what it's talking about. The perfection part of it is kind of implied, because we're walking in wholeness. You know, we're also walking in perfection. We're walking in fullness. But I think the more accurate interpretation there is in entirety, or completeness, like it says, because again, you know, we were created actually to be connected to the Almighty. We were created to be connected to the Almighty, and because of transgression, we're separated, right? So we always kind of are longing to kind of fill that spot, that place in us that has been separated. We're always longing for wholeness, right? Which is what we find when we walk with the Almighty. So Yahweh is speaking with Avram and saying to him, you know, this is how you're able to continue in this thing, because he's already on the path, right? He's already there. He's already doing the things, right? But again, he has to kind of strengthen that faith that he already has to continue it, because again, this promise the Most High keeps on turning the dial up on him, right? Where the first thing he says is that I'm going to make your seed great, but he don't know how he's going to do it. But now he's kind of making it more specific, and so he's turning up the dial on a situation where he needs to have more faith. But again, the faith that he has is kind of just I don't want to say it's simple, but it's not complex. It's really just understanding that he's dealing with the actual creator of all things, and he's able just to accept that and deal with it. But when we look over here, what was done with his name is interesting. What's done with his name, where he turns from Avram to Abraham. Verse 5, no longer shall your name be Avram, but your name shall be Abraham. When we look at that in the Hebrew, he's taken Avram, which means exalted father. Avram in the Hebrew means exalted father. So it really kind of deals, I guess, to be a father, you have to have sons or daughters or seed, right? But being exalted father, to me, when I think about that, it's about him. It's about Avram. But it seems like when he turns to Abraham, where he's the father of a multitude of nations, to me, I feel like it expands beyond him to the seed. Where he's a father, yes, so he's a father who, yes, does indeed have seed, but it's a multitude of nations. So it's kind of an expansion of the role with this Avram. And when you look at Avram and Abraham, the only difference between the two is that you've now added a hey in the middle. You've added the hey in the middle, which makes Avram Abraham. And when we look at the hey is the man with his arms raised, which gives you the idea of breath. And when we think about the Ruach is breath, right? So when you add the breath to Avram, you kind of expand your role. And actually, when we think about Avram, turn to Abraham, this is his purpose, right? His purpose is to be the father of a multitude of nations. That's his purpose, right? So we're able to realize and actualize our purpose when we're able to get the Spirit in the midst of us. The breath, when the breath is able to get in the midst of our situation, we're able to realize and manifest our purpose. And that's what we see over here with Aram, where he says, no longer shall your name be called Aram. No longer will it be about you and your situation, right? It's now going to be about you and your seed, right? This blessing that the Most High is bestowing upon him through the relationship, right? So the Most High dealing with Avram and the relationship becoming fortified and growing is the thing that's able to allow for this transition, this transformation to take place, right? So when we look at kind of what that hay represents, it represents the breath being in the midst of his situation. The Most High being in the midst of his situation is the way that this blessing is able to be realized.
The name changes is very, very important.
It's not a light thing.
It's not a light thing because look, when Jacob got changed to Israel, but I reflect on the moment that a prophetess, this was a prophetess too, had told me my name is to be Oded, for I will be a restorer of truth and encourager of my people. I laughed at her, man, but lo and behold, I became Oded, and I strive to live up to his meaning, because I take that serious. Just as like Abram was Abraham, Jacob was Israel. A lot of those changes in names plays a very important part of your characteristics of transformations, because they was once somebody that turned into being someone better.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring up Yaakov, because there's a difference between the change of Avram's name and the change of Yaakov's name.
Right.
The wording is exactly the same. When it says over here, no longer shall your name be called Avram, it says the same thing over later on with Yaakov, where it says, no longer shall your name be called Yaakov. It's worded exactly the same. But when we think about kind of the implications that go along with the situation, we think about the changing of Yaakov's name to Israel. It's really kind of a spiritual. It has spiritual significance.
Right.
Where over here, it's kind of a physical significance. It's dealing with the physical realm. So we don't hear, when we look in the scriptures, it don't say Avram no more.
Nope.
It only says Abraham, because that's something that's in the physical realm that's manifest, is done. He's going to be this thing that the Most High said that he's going to be.
Right.
But when we look at Israel, where it's different, where Israel's fighting.
We talked about that before. Remember?
Yeah. So Israel's fighting to kind of be Israel.
Yeah, because sometimes we can go back to Yaakov.
Right.
That's like when my people used to tell me, they would call me O'Day and stuff. And once in a while, like, not to say this is happening to them, but to get my attention, to get my full attention, they'll call me by my name, Andre. And I'm like, hey, well, I knew you would say something now that I got your attention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I do understand that. Or someone will tell me, oh, Melissa, for instance. Oh, you acting like Andre now. You're not acting like O'Day. You're acting like Andre now. So little things like that, I think about, and I apply that to same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so if we keep on going, right? So verse 7, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout the generations for an everlasting covenant. An everlasting covenant. That word everlasting, which is olam. What verse is that? Verse 7.
7. Olam.
Verse 7. Whew. Everlasting. Olam is an interesting word. I'm gonna get past this. Here we go. Olam, long duration, antiquity, futurity, forever, everlasting. Where is Strong? What's that? Hold on.
Wow, she's here.
I'm looking for the Strong, and I can't get it on here.
Here, I'll get it.
So when we look at this word olam, another way to think about this word olam is time indefinite.
Time indefinite.
Time indefinite, or the vanishing point, where you look off in the distance, where that thing just keeps on going till you can't see it anymore. That also means olam, because we think about olam as being this thing that's forever. it can be forever, but it's not necessarily forever. But it's as long as we can visualize it. It's as long as we can think about it. But it's not necessarily could be forever, but it really has the idea of a vanishing point or time and death. As we can think about forever in terms of going forward, but it's kind of hard to think about forever going backwards. We think about the Almighty, because if the Most High don't have a creator, He's from everlasting to everlasting. So we could kind of think about Olam in one direction, but it's kind of hard for us to think about it in the opposite direction. It seems like everything got a beginning, the way we think about things, right? But again, this word Olam is time indefinite or the vanishing point. And I'm saying that because when we think about the Davidic covenant, where it won't be a time where the son of David won't sit on the throne, but in the affirmative, David's now on the throne right now from a physical perspective, right? But if we think about Yeshua as being the manifestation of that, who He is indeed our King, right?
Right.
He does sit on the throne, right? He's our King, but there's not a physical person sitting over it. Just like the Levitical priesthood is an everlasting covenant, right? But there's where the priests at. So this word Olam, word Olam is a word that, for all intents and purposes, does mean forever. But there could be breaks in it, though. Like we think about forever, and there's no end to it. But there could be holes in the situation, because that vanishing point, that part where we can't see an end to it, there might very well actually be an end to it. We just can't see it.
Can't see it.
Are you talking about verse 7? Yahweh says He has an everlasting covenant with His seed. So that is forever. Yeah, he stopped will break His covenant.
Everlasting. That is true.
I'm talking about the word everlasting. So, for instance, the Most High, right over here, is saying that He's making an everlasting covenant with your people, right?
Yes.
And this is a sign of that covenant, this cutting of the flesh, right? But at the same time, we also see where He cut the majority of that seed off.
Divorced her.
So there's a break.
Due to
Oh, there's still
disobedience.
disobedience, yes. But there's still a break, though, right? Now, because of the covenant that He made, He's still going to go out for those ones that he cut off. But there was still a break. So I'm saying that we think about everlasting in the way that we think about it. And I'm saying that this word olam is not, it can mean everlasting the way we think about it, but it could also mean everlasting in a way that we don't think about it. It's just about this time indefinite.
Right.
Because the same thing is true for the Levites. He says he's making an everlasting covenant with the Levites, and there's obviously a break in that.
Yeah,
but in the end times, we know that there's going to be sacrifices that are made. We know there's going to be Levitical priests doing it.
But they died out, but our priests doesn't.
But that is true. But there's still going to be Levites doing the work. And right now there isn't. So I'm saying there's a break in the situation. But it don't make this word, it don't make it, I'm saying if we look at it and just think about it as far as everlasting in the English, it means everlasting. it's always going to last if we think about it from that perspective. But that's English.
Mm-hmm.
The word olam really means, look, it means concealed. So it's going out into this place, into this point that I can't tell where it stops or ends, or if it does stop or end. Potentially, but not necessarily. I can't see it, it's too far away. So the same thing,
You never said it's gonna be a breakage.
say it again.
The Lord's not saying it's gonna be like a breakage or
But time shows us that there is a break. That's what I'm saying, because David, there's no physical seed of David sitting on the throne. So time is showing us that there is a break, but on a physical level. But from a spiritual perspective, we know that the Most High is King.
Mm-hmm.
So he's sitting there. He's the King right now.
But changing those words can make it tricky, and that's like how we're able to like understand in that time. Changing those words in English or whatever make it tricky. That's why they can put people who are non-believers, they can read something like that and say there's a contradiction.
Yeah.
Because from a carnal perspective,
That is true.
you have to be enlightened to even like we gotta get that word translation and understand it's not a contradiction. It doesn't
Right.
really say, and it doesn't say that it's not basically recognizing to this particular thing, like to act like it. I think it.
When we think about, it's interesting when we think about the way we think. You don't know you think in a Greek mindset, but you kind of do. You don't know it. In the Greek, everything is just concrete. It's just in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't get to 5 without getting to 4. You must have 4 first in order to get to 5.
Mm.
Where Hebrew's not like that. It's like a block, like a big old ball or something,
But that's
where
just like-
everything is together, where it's different.
but that's
Exactly. It's not linear.
My understanding is totally different. Like when I'm reading, like I feel like I'm reading, I'm starting like to learn. It's the same. I told you my first yeah, my first you have to read the same Bible. That's how bad. That's how bad because it's like you read from the yes.
Yeah. But you read from the same Bible with a different mind frame. You getting out of this Greek thought process and getting into a Hebraic thought process, which is different.
Right.
So I sit up here and talk to people, and they sit up here and try to talk to me about the new covenant, like we're not in the new covenant, because in the prophecies it says this is gonna happen, and then this.
Damn.
So because it is not 1, 2, 3, 4,
Mm-hmm.
we ain't there yet.
I just was watching someone and talked about like those who try to stay on this new covenant tip. You can't be in a new covenant without even knowing about the old covenant. So you can't even lean on this new covenant process without understanding and because the new covenant still it's still related, it's we know it's you can't just have that mindset of just like like the Old Testament it's all in it came in one without
Right, they're definitely connected.
You know, we're looking at it. What's big too, I think about people getting misconstrued is that covenant.
Mhm.
Covenant is agreement between 2 or more parties.
Right.
So that means other party has to uphold their end of the agreement.
Yeah.
So we can see the
Sure.
break of the covenant. If you don't uphold it, and you might uphold his end, and it'd be like, oh, why is this going on? Because we or the other party uphold their end.
Yeah.
But then it's everlasting because hey, the children can still come back
Right.
to the covenant
It's not just done for
Yeah.
to establish this agreement that maybe your forefathers fell out or something like that.
Exactly. So even that, when looking at it like that, we can see where there's breaks. But the Most High is keeping his end. He cutting you off because of wickedness, but your children, he gonna let back in based on the thing that he already said.
But imagine if the Most High was like, hey, you mess up, I'm just cutting you off. And y'all spring it forever. We don't got a chance.
Not a chance.
But now our forebears have messed up, but now we ourselves can now be the things back and establish the covenant.
Exactly.
And it's the same covenant though. It's like pretty much as far as like if you revert back in time from the wicked ways, like you have that
Yeah.
that evolution.
When when we look at the scriptures, there's different places where the Most High makes these covenants. But really, outside of the covenant that was made with Noah in terms of the rainbow, outside of that, everything builds on this. Everything else builds on the covenant that the Most High made with Abraham. And all the other covenants that come are really kind of extensions of this original covenant. He's able to have a Davidic covenant because there was an Abrahamic covenant. He's able to have a Levitical covenant because of this. You're still dealing with the seed of Abraham. So all of these other things, there's a Mosaic covenant because of the Abrahamic covenant.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these other things are really just building off of the covenant that he made with Abraham. Where, when you think about it, when I think about, the Christian thought process,
Mm-hmm.
when you think about how they look at this idea of grace.
Oh man.
If this ain't grace, I don't know what is. To say that because of the fact that he made a promise to somebody who's been gone for thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I got a chance. Because of that, how that ain't grace? What did that got to do with me, really? Nothing. He chose me based on the fact that something that happened with something that had nothing to do with me.
I'm living off his faith. I'm not
Exactly.
it's off his faith.
So this idea that grace is like some new thing that happened all of a sudden, it doesn't make any sense. The Most High's character never changed. He's always been about grace. We can see right here where he's sitting up here talking about Avram being a father of a multitude of nations.
Mm-hmm.
That is able to come to pass. A multitude of nations is blessed because of the faith of Abraham. How that ain't grace?
Yeah,
I don't know how it is. It is. It's grace.
it is grace. It is grace. You're right.
All right, let's get back. Let's drop back down to this circumcision thing. I'll just make a note that the same thing in terms of if we look at verse 15. As for Sarai, your wife, she shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and I will indeed will give you a son by her. So we see that now we don't have no more kind of, there's no obscurity. It's gonna be through her. We don't have to sit up here and go through this kind of wondering or doing these kind of taking these steps to get to the thing that I'm saying it's going to happen. It's going to be through her. And again, just like with Avram, that Hay is added to her name as well.
Mm.
Same thing, adding that Hay to the name, that's changing it. Just like with Avram. But I wanted to get back over to this thing over here, verse 10. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised.
Mm.
And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Right? So when we look at this whole thing with circumcision, and again, when we're looking at it, the only reason why I'm just not doubling down on the whole situation because I don't know for a fact of what other cultures was doing.
I looked it up briefly, a few sources. There's no, there's really no other human history like circumcision prior to.
Outside of it.
I knew that.
Yeah. It makes sense. I just don't know.
Because even when they just sons killed the Jacob. Yeah, like when they killed that nation, took her sister, and they was like, they got the circumcised, and then after they circumcised, they killed them off, like.
Yeah.
But it just makes sense to keep it. To me, I felt like honestly, it's not spiritual like that way because when you make the new covenant of circumcising your heart, like obviously other nations will probably like copy, and you figure people living in the land amongst our people at one point in time, just like they have influence of certain things, like how he was supposed to marry with their kids. We still gave our sons to them girls, so they customs went either it was with their daughters with our sons, customs went when they had kids. So it makes sense for him to be like, all right, that it probably won't matter. It's hard, like this other people that circumcised, that's probably not even.
I mean, we can see after, and one of the reasons when we look over into West Africa and see the customs of those people over there, you know, where they got us from in West Africa, one of the things that points them to being Israel is the fact that they're circumcision. Right. So there's other things too, but I'm just saying.
Even I think it was the
Yeah.
the way they had the judging system, like our whole organization was like a prestigious like set of people, like how I think of hospitality too. And if you think about naturally, I mean now it's a little bit like we've been oppressive. Some of us are making more good than others. But for the most part, we're like that naturally caring culture. Like we'll see something happen over Facebook, we start dropping and put like, put like all of us naturally have this hospitality in us. Like,
Yeah.
naturally.
So when we think about this thing, right, this sign of the covenant, and you bring up this whole thing about the circumcision of the heart, but when you think about circumcision, and this is something that I like to think about all the time, circumcision, except for this first time, Abraham had to circumcise himself, right? Because wasn't nobody doing it. But in general, the commandment really is for you to circumcise your son. So circumcision in and of itself, in general, is something that happens to you. It's not something that you do yourself. It's not something that, in general, that you sit up here and do to yourself. It's something that's done to you. So when we think about the circumcision of the heart, and we think about it from a spiritual perspective, even when you look at Ezekiel 36, where it talks about how I'll take away your stony heart and give you a heart of flesh. It's talking about something that's happening to you. It's not something that you're doing to yourself. So when you think about this idea of the circumcision of the heart, when you think about this kind of removing of this spiritual surgery that's going on, it's not something that you do to yourself. It's something that the Most High is doing in you. In generally speaking.
I think it's the history of even his interaction with us in general. It's never anything that we do to ourselves. It's always something he wants to do. Like, I was with them.
Right. So I'm just saying that just to say, when you think about this idea of doing things, because when Paul sits up here and talks about later, talks about this whole idea of circumcision, I feel like he's giving us kind of understanding as to where these things fall, because we see. Let's just look over. Let's look over at Romans chapter 4. Let me pull that up. It's hard to see. Romans chapter 4, verse 10. Okay, can somebody start reading that verse 10 of Romans chapter 4? Just read nice and loud.
How then was he reckoned? In the circumcision or in uncircumcision? Not in circumcision, but in uncircumcision. And he received the sign of circumcision, and still the righteousness of the belief while in uncircumcision. For him to be a father of all those believing through uncircumcision, for righteousness to be reckoned to them also. And the father of circumcision to those who are not only or of the circumcision, but who also walk in the steps of the belief which our father Abraham had in circumcision.
Okay, stop right there. So when we see with Paul, something that he had to go through in terms of the writings that he gave, and we also see with the other apostles, the 12 apostles, things that they had to go through with this idea of circumcision. If circumcision is this thing, it's the sign of the covenant. It's the mark that you are the seed of Abraham. If that's true, it should be the thing that says if you're Israel or not. So you always had this thing with people making circumcision be kind of this signifier. Where we see over here, which helps us to understand the thought of the fact that the most Avram showed that he was faithful before he was circumcised. The circumcision was something that gave you a sign of the thing that the place where he already was in terms of being faithful. So when I think about this, I think about kind of we can't get to a place where we feel like we're kind of working our way into the situation, where the things that we do as a result of the relationship that we have with the Most High. It's not kind of the thing that begins the situation. As if to say, I'm gonna go to somebody and be like, "Oh, you trying to you found that you Israelites." I'm not gonna sit up there and be like, "Are you circumcised?" That's not the first thing that I'm gonna deal with. You can't, or do you keep the Shabbat, or you got bacon in your refrigerator? Right? I can't sit up here and deal with all the things that you need to be doing first. That's not the jump off point. It's all of the goodness that you could do.
It's gonna automatically, like, it's gonna, once a person's really like accepting that spirit or wanting that, everything's gonna automatically, the desire is gonna be, it's gonna make the person desire to, for that fear, like, it's not gonna, like, there's no problem, it's not gonna be, some things do be a process, but as long as they're letting the spirit manifest, they're gonna automatically start wanting to learn more what they have to do to be right.
And which for me is kind of a reason why I'm not the kind of person that's going to sit up here and be like trying to tell somebody what they must needs to be doing. because you can't be the spirit for somebody else. The Ruach, if you doing something because I said that you should be doing it, it's not real. Even if you are doing it, it's not because you think that is right. It's because you don't want to hear me talking to you about doing it, right? So it has to be the righteousness that you're doing has to be something that you're doing based on the fact that the Most High, that thing is happening inside of you. That's when it's real. If you doing it because somebody else is saying that you need to be doing it, that don't mean anything. Your heart really wasn't never worked on. That's all external. If the only reason why you doing the thing is because, well, it looks right, I should be doing it. Appearances. But when it's real in your heart, then you're gonna do it based on that, and then that's when it's real.
And you can't control nobody's spirit. They got their own, like, they gotta have their own fear for the Most High.
Right, and
If they
yeah,
they gotta have their own, like, their own fear of what,
right.
what's gonna.
Because it's meaningless, really.
They can't live off it.
Because I'm not Elohim. Nobody's Elohim but Elohim. So for somebody to be doing a thing based on somebody else's thoughts or understanding of a thing, it doesn't make any sense, and it's not real. Unless it's from the place like we see with Abraham, where he had that genuine relationship with the Most High, and that was the thing that facilitated his walk, because of the fact that he knew who the Most High was, and therefore he walked before him in perfection because of that, not because of appearances or whatever. So when we think about this whole idea of, where the sign of the covenant fits in for us today, we got to be just like the apostles of old. I can't sit up here and say you're not saved because you don't do X, Y, Z. The main thing you need to worry about is developing a genuine relationship with Messiah. And the proof that that's genuine is that it looks like something after the fact. Other than that, you working outside of, you out of bounds, right? If the things that you're doing is not based on your relationship with Messiah, you done came in some other door.
I say mostly the world where you got put in there's obedience. Because everybody got a relationship. Everybody, I got a relationship with them. But there's no obedience.
Well, let's say real obedience, a real relationship. Because you're right. It's absolutely obedience. That's absolutely right. And we do have to define terms over here. Everybody can sit up there and say that you have a relationship, but what do it look like? If it don't look like walking after the ways of Messiah and what he say, then I got some bad news for you. That's not a real relationship. If there ain't no obedience, that's not a relationship. That's true. But as to your point, Messiah is our master, but he's not your master if you're not doing what he said. So obedience absolutely is key. And so you're absolutely right. We have to. It's not like these general terms where we just say, well, yeah, I have a relationship with Messiah. Well, what's the nature of that relationship? He knows my heart. You know your heart, and he knows it's wicked.
That's like, okay, this situation I'm in now, I'm not gonna call it like this. It won't happen. But anyway, Bria, she finally wants to cheer for Southside Bears, right? And of course, she can't do it because it's on Saturday. And it's like, I initially felt conflicted, like, oh, I really wanna, let her cheer. My nephew plays for the Bears. It would be cute to watch her cheer for her cousin. And like, I don't want her folks, not included and left out, but ultimately, like, my fear of breaking the standard is outweighing, this desire she has to cheer.
Yeah.
That's what she said, though. It's a
I'm like, I thought we broke the twin, because I was so scared of her. I don't break her heart. I'm like, so you can't cheer for the Bears. She was like, okay, well, how does it do gymnastics today? I was like, did she just give me for a look? I didn't think she was going to in the way that she did. Like,
Yeah.
but she's always been a negotiator in that way. Like, so I think it makes sense for her to come with that rebuttal, but it made me feel better as a mom. Like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not taking it to her and
Yeah.
keeping her out of something she really wants to do, but ultimately she has this whole other idea to begin with.
Yeah. And it is, since we live in this world where we're kind of intertwined with the world, it's yeah, it becomes this other adversity that we have where we especially as young people want to kind of be involved in all of these other things that don't necessarily have anything to do with the Most High, and then sometimes they even conflict. But we got to sit up there and make these decisions, but the decisions got to be made. They got to be made, and we have to be able to always put the Most High first, because again, we look over here, understanding that the Most High, what he said to Abraham, right? I am Elohim Almighty, walk before me and be blameless. So that means that I have to do the things that he likes, not necessarily things that I like or that everybody else is doing.
And then my mom, she got a phone on like, I think she cheering. She can't have a childhood like
Yeah.
into making, like, allowing her to cheer. I'm like, look, my desire to be obedient is a lot stronger than her
Yes.
little cheer, and even being attacked by you, and it's like you're attacking my parenting.
Yeah. But the thing about it is that the thing that we have to be able to, which the way you're talking about it, you moving in the right direction. We have to get to the place where we're worried about what the Most High think, and it don't matter what these other people think. You got to get to that place where it don't matter what you think if you saying something that's outside of what the Most High think. And
Your child, not to cut you
Go
off,
ahead.
Your child growing up being set on the course to be obedient to the Most High is going to be much more beneficial than her thoughts upon her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sister on here has a serious question. Her name is Maya Angelina.
Oh, yeah, I can see it over
She said, Shabbat Shalom family, I've always had a question related to circumcision, as I have a toddler who is not, and we're relatively new to the truth. Does anyone have any insight for what to do?
A Tyler who's not circumcised?
Well, she said that she has a child, related to circumcision. She has a toddler who is not circumcised.
So I my stance on the situation is, as Israel, this is what we do. What I won't sit up there and say is put it in the category of something that you can't get to the place where you're doing things in order to be saved. Is when the thing is coming as a result of, I know that I'm following after the Most High, and I know that He wants for me to do X, Y, Z. So therefore, I'm going to be obedient to His will and do it. It has to be on that realm. But when we think about it, when we think about this whole thing, you can't put the cart before the horse.
Right.
But at the same time, you got to have both things. So in other words, I can't say that if you don't, you got to keep the Shabbat in order to be saved.
Right.
But at the same time, if you save, you gonna keep Shabbat. So it's kind of like a fine line that goes in between these things. So I'm saying I put circumcision really in the category of all these other things in terms of if we love the Father, then we'll keep His commandments. The fact that we do the things that His commandments call for us to do is a result of our love for Messiah. I mean, it's a
right. Being Israelites.
yeah, as Israel. So it's a hard thing, and it's easy for me to say because I'm on the other side of the physical sign. But it's these people's grown men doing it, right?
So what would
I
the answer
mean,
to the question be? It would be wise for her to do it.
I wouldn't tell her not to do it.
Right. So she's listening now. So Maya, it will be wise to do it. You okay?
I don't know where you go to get something like that done. I don't know how you go about doing it.
What about when you took Moshe to get his done on the 8th day, of course?
Well, yeah,
You went to a specialist, right?
well, Moshe got done by the doctor.
Right, by the doctor. Okay.
So,
Huh? Maya, where are your residency at, Maya?
Because we got Israel done. He was like a traveler. He was a Jewish guy, and he's like a traveler Jew. And he'll come to you. Now I don't know, it's Asian, but they have.
Tell her to get inbox the information. We'll get her some information.
Yeah.
Is that one of your friends?
This guy came to us, right to our house and did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But you talking about a new baby though.
Exactly. That's the other thing too.
But he's like a moil where he goes and does. But even still, but what'd you say? He did adults too?
No, I said Israel was like 8 days old.
Oh yeah. Oh, you said 8 days old. Yeah. Yeah. Like Hiskey and Moshe both were circumcised when they was 8 days old.
I'm bringing his son too. So I mean, the 6. So you gotta hold him down.
Yeah.
That's what it. Not a. You don't use no. I don't know if you put something on it, but I don't know if it numbs or anything like that. Numbs a painful thing.
Yeah.
Or you get it. Painful.
We have puppies like when I dip the tails, you have to do it you got like a time period between I think it's 12 hours and up to like the second day.
Yeah.
It won't hurt them.
Yeah.
I feel like that age.
He won't remember by the next round.
Right. He won't really.
He probably won't.
And children heal really fast.
Yeah.
And so wow, I was circumcised on the 8th day. My mother told me my grandfather made her do it.
Yeah.
They make it to the family. They was taking up the valuable slave babies and kids.
Okay, so yeah, we'll get you some information on people that could travel and do that. Again, I mean, again, it's easy for us to sit up here and say
thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
She'll send it over.
but I feel like it's it's part of who we are. But we definitely have to put it in its proper place and realizing that you're not doing this thing for salvation. You're doing it as a result of your salvation. If Messiah is your master, then that means he masters you. You do what he likes. And we just have to be able to put that in its proper perspective. Okay, does anybody have any other thoughts, questions, or comments about any of those things that we talked about?
Yeah, make sure you circumcision of the heart as well. Under the new covenant, that's what it calls for.
Yeah.
I do have a on Genesis 17:25. I can see,
1725.
where Ishmael was 13, when he got circled, which lets me believe that there was a purpose for him to be under his father.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. He
So
was
got
circuit. He was
circumcised at
circuit.
13, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's still there. So Isaac wasn't there yet, right?
Right.
So you got however many years from here forward till Isaac get there until he gets put away and all that, right? So that definitely was a valid point to be able to know he wasn't the chosen, but he still had some of the ways. He still learned some of the ways of his father's house. And we learned later on one of the reasons that the Most High choose. I don't know if it's later on, we read already. One of the reasons why the Most High chose Avram in the first place is because he know that he would teach his children
Teach his children, right.
the commandments.
That's a lesson in itself. That's a lesson in itself because we're accountable. Something me and Trisha was talking about in regards to that. You're accountable for your child. Like you're blessed to raise this child of the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be instilling this in him because he left this child to you.
Yeah.
This is not yours.
Yeah.
It's not world. So you need to be, even though it might be like you need to be instilling this and bringing them up a certain way according to him. He blessed you with this. So you need to be.
Yeah, so in the commandment where it talks about teaching the children diligently, that word is to poke. It's uncomfortable. That teaching don't feel good. It's not something that's pleasurable.
Right.
It can be painful and hurt, right? But it's for the good of the child, and it's for to continue on the ways of the of Israel.
It says you spirit
Does say that.
Proverbs, one of the icons of daycare. It says, train a child up in the way he should go.
Yes.
That way when he grow old, he will not depart from it.
Yeah.
That's one of our mottos at child care.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that being said, for now, we will go ahead and end for the lesson today. And next week, y'all willing, we will continue on with our look at Genesis. Okay. All right. Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, family.